How's it going, and welcome to No Fun Allowed series on Candlekeep Mysteries, a 5th edition module. In today's video, we'll be covering Alkazaar's Appendix as your players go on a epic journey to finish out a quest long since forgotten. Of course, there is going to be a ton of spoilers, so players do not watch this, but DMs that want that added insight, go ahead and stick around because we have a lot to cover. And here it is, Alkazaar's Appendix. As you can actually note here, there's two books. There's Alkazaar's Appendix, and then Alkazaar's Thrilling Tales. The Thrilling Tales is the big book, and the Appendix is the small book. The books cover Alkazaar, who is a famous adventurer who went and did crazy things. He was totally good looking, and everything was awesome. And the Thrilling Tales covers all of his journeys. But the Appendix, that small one, covers the one adventure that eluded him. He went into the desert of Anauroch and tried uncovering a nether scroll, but unfortunately could not do it. But in the margins, he urges anyone that reads this book to finish out that quest. Now, this is a very high level adventure, level 15, so we're going to have to be throwing quite a lot at your players to challenge them, and I'm here to tell you there is a lot to challenge them. When your players are in Candlekeep, either because they are reading about epic adventures or some avowed shows up and says, hey, you guys are epic adventurers, you should read this. Reading this book, they're going to be given all of these bullet points here in the Lost Golem section, and these bullet points are going to inform your players about what they're getting into, about trying to find a nether scroll, about interacting with the Anauroch desert, about trying to find this lost golem. So the thing to note here is, you can give them all this information, but what I would strongly suggest is you hit them over the head with how powerful a nether scroll is. Nether scrolls are noted as being epic items, incredibly epic. These things are able to do things that nothing else can. So you should absolutely hit them over the head with it. The fact that this nether scroll is a big deal, and they should be adventuring after it. And the reason why we beat our players over the head with that is because by the very end, they are given a choice of whether to get that nether scroll or not. After reading through the book a little bit, your players will be able to find that there is actually a portal in here. So as it always states in here, your players can spend some time reading it. If you just want to get the adventure rolling, say the portal opens up and your players can feel the desert heat through it, and then your players can jump inside, and this is a one-way portal to the Anauroch desert. It is in the adventure background here where we get all the fine details about what this adventure is all about. Your players will be trying to find a one Hamu Kai, a prince that lorded over the region long ago. However, a battle with a blue dragon named Krishka unfortunately left the prince in a dire situation. The stone golem, the prince's compatriot, unfortunately got flung away during the fighting, and the prince thought to himself, okay, I'm pretty much not going to be able to do anything now. He then sealed himself up in a tomb, and the blue dragon cannot get to it without a blue sapphire, which is located in the stone golem. So the blue dragon, Krishka, decided to seek out lichdom, became a Draco Lich, and is just sitting there waiting for that blue gem to arrive, or for the prince to finally die out. Once your players jump through that portal and arrive to the Anauroch desert, they will appear 50 feet away from the scene. They'll see two Bedine individuals that are staring at a stone golem that is partially buried in the sand. These two desert nomads, named Pesh and Shamir, are potential guides throughout the entirety of this adventure. But something to note is your players are level 15, so they're pretty freaking powerful. Do they really need two people that are basically just mortal humans along them? Not really. What I would suggest is, after your players interact with these two individuals and get some great information about the Anauroch desert, about how things work around here, then your players can interact with the golem, and once they get that golem up and running, you could easily just have those two wander off. But let's talk about the golem here. The golem understands common but can't speak. It can open up the sealed vault where the prince rests, and the golem remains a non-combatant unless it's directly attacked. What I would strongly suggest is, for the remainder of this adventure, Don't have the golem in combat at all whatsoever because, one, that's just another thing to add to combat, and two, you know, it's really not going to do too much compared to what the players can do. This golem, as per that picture there, has a blue sapphire in the center, and some greedy people might try and steal the thing, but what I would suggest is just say, no, that's not going to work, it's too attached, or the golem tries to smack you away or whatever else. Make sure that the plot gets moving along here, because this is part of the adventure. Now, hopefully your players were taking notes and paying attention when they were reading Alkazaar's Appendix, and with that, they'll be able to understand the story of what's going on here. And with that, if the prince's name, Hamukai, is spoken out loud, then the stone golems are gonna finally activate and look around and join the party. So it's here where you want to give the stone golem some feel. You want to give the stone golem some character. You want the stone golem to be a compatriot of the parties because that is going to have that emotional heartstring once the stone golem finally leaves the group. So Pesh and Shamir, who are just standing around during this whole time, you can easily have them say, hey, you know, we can guide you through the deserts, we know the tricks of the trade, but once again, they're higher level adventurers, they don't really need the help. What I would strongly suggest is, if the two individuals are not joining them on their adventures, then just have the golem start walking in one straight direction as it tries to lead them back to the former prince. So I'm never a fan of giving a crown-like symbol on top of NPCs. I don't like NPCs being invincible. So if your players are absolutely murder hobo-y, then sure, let them have the sapphire. But, of course, you know, that's pretty lame, honestly. If this is the adventure, then hopefully they're buying into it. But they don't actually need the stone golem to get through this adventure. But my goodness, if they don't have that stone golem, then this could be a big problem. Now, once your players have the stone golem in question, or at least the sapphire, they want to find out where Prince Hamukai is. So they're just going to start walking into the desert. Whether that is the desert nomads that are guiding them along, or if it is just the stone golem, or if the players have none of those options and you're just guiding them willy-nilly, whatever the case may be, they start traveling through the Anorak Desert. It states here that traveling in the cool of the night is the best way to journey across the desert. But the thing is just to note, if you find yourself in a desert in real life, more often than not, traveling through the desert during the day is actually better than traveling at night, just because of how extremely cold deserts can be at night and how dangerous they can be at night. But let's go ahead and say that this is a magical world because the Anorak Desert is actually magical. And to showcase how magical it is, let's look at the desert encounters. We get some wandering monsters of some 3 cyclopses that are bickering at each other looking for food. They have some Bedine prisoners tied up in their lair. 2 Rakshasas who are masquerading as Bedine nomads that are going to attack the party when they let their guard down. Pretty fun stuff. We also get the Stone Androsphinx, which is something that I would strongly recommend that you show off to your players. No matter what other encounters you do, I would strongly do this one above all the others. This one is really cool. Your players get a simple little riddle. Forked like a serpent's tongue, I spark the thunder's peal. With every stroke, the storm is wrung of darkness by my zeal. What am I? Then you give them just a few seconds, and if they answer correctly, then boom, they get lightning resistance. Which is going to be huge because your players will be going up against a blue dragon Dracolich. But if they don't get it, then they get attacked by the Androsphinx. And also here we get Voices of Netheril. As the adventurers walk along the dunes, a cold wind howls across the desert and they hear the shriek of tortured souls. That's really cool, right? Something to note is the Anorak Desert used to be a beautiful place. But, of course, with Netheri's magic and just everything that terrible happened, this place got glassed. It is now just a perpetual desert that has been absolutely ruined by magic. And it's actually listed in there if you're reading about the Bedine. The Bedine actually don't like magic for that reason, because the Netheris basically ruined everything. Now, as your players travel through the desert, make sure that they arrive at whatever new destination frequently enough so it's not just a boring desert, make it feel fun. Once your players arrive at Haruun, they'll see this vast cliff, and they can start making their way inside. Inside of here, they will see this cave entrance, and they will see that there's empty sconces dotted with chunks of stucco, and that's going to tell them that there is something man-made here. However, as they move up, they will see some terrible, terrible dung pile. Now, if there's any Bedines with the party, then they can immediately tell the party, oh yeah, that's totally worm dung, be careful. But you can have a fun moment here where you say, okay, as you look at the pile of dung, there's something shiny in there. Do you want to start searching and digging through it? And you can have people dig through it, and on a 1d4 they get some cool item here. These are pretty nice items here, you know, 2000 GP worth of stuff, pretty good. Animated shield, awesome. Dwarven plate, solid. And a ring of resistance acid, pretty cool. In area 2, we have the worm rubble. So as they're walking down this hallway, unfortunately they're going to see that this place has basically been destroyed by a purple worm. They can try and move over it with a DC 15 dexterity or strength check, which is a acrobatics or athletics check. But if they fail, then the purple worm is alerted. So it states here that once the worm is alerted, then it knows what's up. But what I would strongly recommend here is you only have it attack once they have actually made it through here. Because of how purple worms work, you know, it could just absolutely ruin the entire environment. I would have them read everything that there is to read in Area 3 first, and then have the purple worm attack as they finish reading the final piece of that story. And what is that story? In Area 3 we have the Hall of Rainbows, and in here your players will be able to see that there is a whole bunch of murals, and these murals are going to tell the tale of Hamukai, about how there is some wizards here, and there is the Sapphire Sentinel, and how the evil dragon Zixo Krishka shows up. You know, all of this is going to really help tell the world about what's going on here, about how the adventure is shaping up. And what's very good to note here is your players will be able to see how the Sapphire Sentinel is destroyed in terrible battle against the dragon Zixo Krishka, who curses Hamukai. You know, this is really going to infer what's going on here. And what I would strongly recommend here is, once again, have the stone golem showing emotion. Have it cry tears of sand, or look sad and look confused. Maybe have it have some brightness and hope in its eyes as the players continue moving along and learning more and more about what is going on here. And finally here in Mural F, they can learn about the location of Azumar. Your players can roll on this, but once again, if they've got anybody with them, including the stone golem, then they'll be able to figure out where to go from here, and they can get chugging along. And it's here where if there's too many failures in the rubble there, then the purple worm can strike out in this location, because that would be a ton of fun. As your players continue traveling to the Necropolis, there is an optional encounter here, which I think is actually a really fun encounter as well. Your players can show up and they can see that there are some little things creeping out around a cave, and they're trying to invite the players in. They are Chewingas that are trying to get some people to help them free Ogrul, the dragon tortoise. Ogrul, the dragon tortoise, was of course an experiment done by the Netherese and has been trapped here for quite some time. The Chewingas are keeping Ogrul alive, and Ogrul keeps the Chewingas safe. So it's a nice little symbiotic relationship. If the players show up and try and help Ogrul, they can see that there are these chains that can be broken with a Dispel Magic, which can be done technically by the player characters, but is probably going to be done by the Stone Golem. If your players choose to free Ogrul, Ogrul will express its immense gratitude and storm off into the sands. What I really like about this is you can just have Ogrul just take off and do whatever, and all the meanwhile the Chewingas are slapping everybody with some nice little charms. But what's really nice is if your players are having a hard time in that final fight, then you can have Ogrul show up like it is Godzilla versus King Kong and have two titans duking it out. That is totally awesome. After yet another unspecified amount of travel, once again just make it feel fun and fresh, your players show up and find the Necropolis of Azumar. And it's through these sand-flooded streets that your players will be able to find some cool stuff. If they explore around a bit, they can actually find some treasure hoards here, which is pretty cool. If it is a treasure hoard for only challenge rating 5 to 10 though, and they're level 15, they're probably not going to find anything too useful, but you know, they can find something, and something's better than nothing, right? We've also got some really fun encounters here with Hands of the Dead. As your players are walking around, all of a sudden a quicksand-like environment envelops the party. But in addition to that, there's also skeleton hands rising up and trying to drag people down. That's a really fun encounter, totally scary, totally recommend running that. We also have Consortium of the Three. If your players read all those murals and were paying attention to all the stories, then they would know of these three wizards. What's really nice about this is, this could just devolve into a regular combat against three flame skulls, whatever. but your players could try and convince these Flame Skulls to help them out. And that would be a ton of fun, because if your players show up to the final engagements here, have some Flame Skulls by their side, that could really help them out. And once your players finally explore around the location of the Necropolis, they can see where they need to go. They need to make their way through a perpetual sandstorm. But the thing to note is, this is no ordinary sandstorm. This is a magical sandstorm. And if anybody tries to make their way through it, they're going to be pelted with 10d10 slashing damage. No one is going to try and actually make it through there if they figure out that's the sort of thing that's going to happen. Which you should totally express to your players, right? You shouldn't just let them try and walk in and get damaged by it. So once your players decide to try to circumnavigate this thing by trying to dig underneath it or just blasting through it with a Dispel Magic, then they can finally get through to the other side. Once again, they're probably going to have to rely on the Stone Golem to cast that 9th level Dispel Magic. Now, once your players make their way through the magical sandstorm, they'll find themselves at the Mastaba. And it's here where they'll see that 2 staircases lead up to either side. If your players try and attempt to go up any of these staircases, they're going to be jumped by 3 giant scorpions and 4 wights. And that's really cool because they're just going to literally claw themselves out of sand. Pretty fun stuff. In addition to that, if combat does break out, then a storm giant skeleton is going to emerge out and attack the party. Just really fun in combat encounters here, really unique characters here. The storm giant skeleton, a unique stat block here, has some pretty unique stuff here. Plus 14 to hit, really solid. Just absolutely dunking on people with those great swords and rock attacks. And it also has the lightning strike attack, really awesome stuff. What's really cool here as well is we actually get some backstory on the storm giant skeleton named Helmdar. Helmdar was actually sent to assassinate several giants that were criminals that stole a Horn of Blasting, and was successful in doing so, but then Krishka killed him and then turned him into a undead thrall. So once your players beat up Helmdar, then they actually get a Horn of Blasting. Pretty cool. After fighting in their engagement, then they can walk up the stairs and go into Area 2, the Mausoleum. And if they somehow circumnavigated the fighting, then Helmdar will be in here and get ready for a fight. What I would say is, if Helmdar gets into a fight, it would make sense that he'd call upon his other undead allies to assist. Just makes sense to me. In Area 3, we have the Draco Lynch's antechamber. Your players walk down the steps, and there they'll get into an incredibly awesome Dragon's Lair fight. As Krishka is going to pry herself from the wall, and she is going to look at the stone golem and say, "Hey, I want that. Give it to me right now." Now, theoretically, your players could be scared at this. Maybe they're beat up from the fights before and are in no condition to fight. Your players may just decide to give it up, right? It's technically possible. But as most adventurers would do, they'll probably say, "No, screw you," and get into a fight. And a fight here is really fun because Krishka, being a Draco Lich, a very, just fun stat block to use. And there's also these fun layer actions. These layer actions include Grubble from above dropping down onto people, clouds of swirling sand that are going to blind people, and selecting 2 points around this location and having lightning arc between them. That's really fun. There is just a ton of things that are going on in this combat you have to keep track of. Krishka's actions herself, her layer actions, her legendary actions. Just a really unique fight here. And hopefully they have drained a bunch of the resources throughout this adventure to make this a more even fight. But once again, this isn't just devolving into straight combat. During that fighting, Krishka should be announcing, "Hey, give me the stone, and I'll let you live. Give me the stone, and you can walk away with your lives." And she'll be saying that if she's winning. But if she starts losing, then she'll start pleading and say, hey, let's calm down here. But something cool to note is your players may just outright kill Krishka, but she is a Draco Lich, and thus she can't be outright killed. Her soul will fly off into her phylactery, and she'll reform in a few days. Make the fight challenging, make it fun, make it just absolutely exhilarating. And once again, I would recommend not having the Stone Golem participate, just to make sure. And once again, I would have the Stone Golem trying to sit on the sidelines if possible, but if it gets struck by something inadvertently, then maybe it helps out the party. And also, very importantly, is if your players are losing, but actually helped out the Dragon Tortoise, the Dragon Tortoise can just bust right through the side of the Mastaba and start beating up on Krishka. There's just a lot of fun dynamics you could have throughout this entire journey. Now, during the tail end of the fight, once she starts losing, she'll say, hey, I'll give you some loot in exchange for that blue sapphire, and that should cue into your players that there's a treasure hoard nearby. With a successful search around here, your players will be able to find a huge treasure hoard of incredibleness. Your players will get a ton of gold, but the gold doesn't matter. They get a Staff of Withering, a +2 longbow, a Chewinga that's going to bestow a magical gift. They get a Wand of Polymorph, but the biggest thing here is the Spell Scroll of Wish. That will be an absolute game changer here. And finally, with Zixokrishka defeated, your players will be able to move on using that blue sapphire and go down to the Hall of Records. Now, this is a really cool scene. As your players walk down through the Hall of Records, you should go ahead and describe to them what they see on the side murals here about all of the adventures Hamukai had, about the stone golem. But then it starts getting to the player characters, about their experiences. And as they're slowly moving forward through the Hall of Records, it finally reaches the point where they see their just recent events, like right these past few seconds, and the final mural is going to show them standing exactly where they are. In Area 5, we have the Vault. As your players walk down here, they'll be able to see what they have been searching for. Hamukai, the prince. Now, this is a really cool scene. They see that the prince is laid here, but there's clearly a magical sarcophagus laid out for him. And here they'll see the nether scroll right there. And that's when your players are given so many different choices. What the heck do they do? Now, the reason why we've been hyping up the nether scrolls and also giving the stone golem some character is your players are given several options here. Your players could choose to open the sarcophagus and take that nether scroll. But if they do that, then the prince dies and the golem begins to cry, and then it is ultimately destroyed. But your players get the nether scroll. If your players let the golem do its thing, then they're going to see that the golem is going to push the prince into the Fields of Elysium, where at that point 3 solars are going to greet the prince into the afterlife. Really fun stuff. Your players could decide to revive the prince using a wish spell. And at that point, that'll be really cool. They'll have saved the prince, and then the prince can go off to Elysium with his stone golem companion, but the prince is going to take the nether scroll with him. These things are important because those are the moral dilemmas that we love to see. Oh, yeah, the nether scroll, that'll make you intelligent, that'll make you powerful, that'll make you rich. But at the same time, you'll be killing that companion you've been helping out this whole time. Ooh. Of course, your players could have just given the sapphire, or maybe even lost, I guess, to the Draco Lich. At that point, Zixokrishka will obtain the nether scroll. Zixokrishka is going to kill the prince, and she doesn't care. She's going to get that nether scroll. And with that nether scroll, the Draco Lich is going to transform the Anorak Desert into even a worse affair and begin killing people and raising undead hordes and making the Anorak Desert a totally gnarly place, and it's totally fodder for future campaign ideas. Now, if your players sent the stone golem off to the Fields of Elysium with the prince and the nether scroll with it, then so be it. But if your players had killed Zixokrishka and they also kept the nether scrolls, then guess what? They've got a Draco Lich that wants their hide. Zixokrishka now is going to be a reoccurring villain that is going to constantly be after those nether scrolls. So your players are going to have to come up with some way on how to finally defeat a Draco Lich and at the same time keep the nether scrolls from it. Really awesome stuff. So what makes the nether scroll so awesome? Here it states that trying to read this thing, it takes 30 days of concentrated study, 8 hours per day. So just you're reading this thing all day, every day, right? To attempt to understand the scroll. After the whole 30 days, the whole month, you are then allowed to make a DC 25 Arcana check. And if that check fails, you take 16 D10 psychic damage, and you can attempt the check again after another 30 days of concentrated study. So 16 D10 is on average 88-ish damage, meaning that would outright kill most people, right? Only higher level adventurers would even be allowed to read this thing, because for anyone else, this would just outright kill them, right? So the thing is if you were actually successful, then your intelligence increases by 2 to a maximum of 22. Once you gain this benefit, you can no longer gain that benefit. So you can't read this thing over and over again. In addition, you also gain advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. Incredibly insane. And you gain the scroll's benefit. A stone golem magically appears in an unoccupied space within 60 feet of you and acts as your ally. And if you die, the golem turns to dust. Incredibly strong stuff. That's the kind of thing that's going to go some people into maybe doing the bad thing. but it's going to be so worth it. So that is the adventure. A really fun one. I love the desert setting. I like the characters you're interacting with. I like the idea of having a stone golem guide that is showing off emotions, and your players could ultimately betray them in the end for power. You know, those themes are just really awesome, and Draco Liches are just absolutely incredible. This is a high-level adventure, right? Your players are going up against quite a lot, and their resources are going to be burned. And that's a good thing, because 15th level adventurers have insane amount of resources. They need to be hit hard with whatever is coming their way, right? I like the exploration, I like the roleplay, I like the combat here. You know, just a lot of fun, unique things going on with this adventure, and I cannot recommend it enough. Not only is this adventure fun during the adventure's time, but also the implications of what goes on afterward. Especially if your players kill Zixo-Krishka, and then they send the Nether Scroll off to the Fields of Elysium. You know, that is a really crazy thing, because then Zixo-Krishka is going to be pissed off and possibly just try and get payback on the party, right? Absolutely fun time. I had a great time running this. Just a lot of great things to be had with this adventure. So go ahead and tell me, are you going to have your players storm through the desert at night, or are they going to go during the sweltering heat day? Are you going to throw all of the random encounters at your players during this journey, or are you going to sprinkle in just one at most? And will your players send the Nether Scroll off to Elysium, or are they going to take that thing for themselves? Go ahead and tell me all those things, because I want to know. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching, thanks for listening, and thank you to my amazing patrons. You guys are absolutely incredible. Thank you so very much, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.